What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Power Rangers Ninja Steel. This is my final thoughts for the show. Now, for those who do not know, there is going to be a follow-up episode because the Ninja Steel finale just aired, and that will be for the Christmas special, which will basically resolve what happens at the end of the finale. So anyway, I already know what happens with that, which is why I think I might as well start with the final thoughts video after watching the finale, which I'll tell you this much right now, the show itself has been pretty good. I'm going to start off basically talking about the Rangers, beginning with what my thoughts are of them for the show so far. Again, there is going to be Super Ninja Steel, which is going to be the follow-up season next year, and that's something to keep in mind, of course. But I thought I'd talk about the Rangers first, then maybe talk about some of the villains, some of the side characters, and just about the story in general, and try to make it so that I can cover as much as possible and give you my overall opinion of things and what I'm hoping for in the future as well. So let's start off with our Rangers. I'm going to begin with Brody, our Red Ranger, who, I'll tell you this much right now, he hasn't been my favorite character, but he's been a character that I've definitely enjoyed a bunch of cases. He's had some decent moments. The way that he started out was kind of cool because he was that one ranger that came off of an evil space alien ship, which was really exciting to see that. It kind of made me really hopeful for him at first, that he could be this really cool character that could have been really exciting. I mean, the fact that we started off with him being on the Galaxy ship, on the Galaxy Warrior ship and everything, and being someone working under Galvanox, and then suddenly he escapes them, that's pretty cool. Of course, there was the whole backstory where we end up seeing his father, disappearing after destroying the Ninja Nexus Prism Star, so that's something to of course note. But as far as things go, he's had a really interesting past with his childhood, and also the fact that he basically lost his brother. He has no idea where his brother is, and then when he comes down to Earth, he goes in search of him. And the one thing that I really appreciate about it when it comes to his brother and about his father is the fact that they don't go nuts with it. For those who don't remember, during Dino Charge and Dino Supercharge, but mainly Dino Charge, they had a huge emphasis on Tyler's father. They kept on saying that they were looking for Tyler's father, and Tyler constantly brought that up, and it was so heavily emphasized throughout Dino Charge. In this case, both his father and his brother are missing at first, but he's not going crazy about it. He mentions it a few times, mainly about his brother, but because his father, he assumes, must have either died or something else must have happened to him. But the whole point was that it was a 10-year period of time, and he basically assumed at that point that, his father must have died or something in battle. So I appreciated that about Brody a lot, the fact that he wasn't this character that was all focused in on his father or his brother. He had his moments, but it wasn't over the top, and I really appreciated that about Brody. Otherwise, his character has been pretty decent. It could have been better in a lot of cases. He wasn't too focused, but he definitely had a lot of attention in a number of different places, especially when it came to battles, when he was morphed, due to the fact that the Japanese footage tended to focus a lot more on the Red Ranger, and just in general, that's how it is in most seasons of Power Rangers even now. So he's been okay. Additionally, let's move on to our next Ranger, which is our Blue Ranger, played by Peter Sederso. And I forgot to mention that our Red Ranger was played by William Schufelt. Now, Peter Sederso, the reason why it's even important to mention is because Peter is the brother of Yoshi Sederso, the actor who played Koda in Power Rangers Dino Charge. So that's actually very cool, of course, and people were really hyped about that last year when it was revealed. Last year when it was revealed that that Yoshi's brother was going to be playing Preston, just because people were hoping that they do like a crossover episode where the two Blue Rangers would meet each other. Even if they don't necessarily mention the fact that they're brothers, the fact that they're in the same place at once would be cool. As far as whether or not that is likely to happen, it actually might end up being that way, because we've already heard that they are making a cameo appearance, that Yoshi is going to make a cameo appearance next year, so that is something to look forward to. But getting back to Peter and his character, which is Preston, I've really enjoyed him a lot. He's probably been one of my favorite Rangers for the season. He's actually one of two. We'll get to the other one later on. But as far as things go, he started off as this really terrible magician that eventually, when he gained his power star, his powers got way better. He actually had civilian powers, basically, that enhanced his abilities when it came to magic. But in this case, what we learned early on was that his ability to use magic, where it really shined, was when he was helping someone out, rather than when he was just trying to do it to impress someone. If he was trying to do it to impress someone, it wouldn't really work, which I actually applaud them for doing it that way, because that was a much smarter tactic, rather than just making it for the pure purposes of attention. I really like that. And of course, there was a recent episode where Princess Viera gave him the Book of Spells, which was really cool, and that really showed him having to learn to, take his time with everything that he has available to him as a magician. And, the magic was something that wasn't original to America. That was actually something that was, that idea was inspired by Japan's Blue Ranger for the same exact season. But in Japan, it was a different character, obviously. But that's why in certain fights, when he would do the attack where his arm would turn into this flaming dragon or whatever, that's from Japan. That's because in Japan he also had magical abilities. So that's why things pretty much transition over the same. So that's pretty cool as a whole. But yeah, as far as things go with his character, he was really cool. He's had some really great moments. He's been a character of kindness, just a really sweet character. Good personality, lots of exciting episodes, and lots of great moments as a whole. So moving on to our next Ranger, which is Calvin. Calvin was alright. Not one of my favorites, but definitely one that I would say is higher, like probably third or fourth highest on my list of favorite Rangers for the season. So as far as things go with him, he's been into mechanics and automobiles and stuff like that. And early on, we saw a lot of that with, his truck and his work that he did in the past. Also, during the three-legged race episode, where we ended up seeing him working with another student who was this cool guy that apparently did really well with vehicles, but in reality, he paid people off to make his vehicles good. He didn't do any of the work himself. So, that really was an episode of teaching for him. And then there was, of course, the election episode as well, which you can bring up, that were noteworthy episodes for Calvin. But as a whole, Calvin has been a pretty decent character. He's actually had he's one of two of the most commonly focused on characters when it comes to episodes, especially the filler episodes. He gets a lot of attention. Him, Preston, and you can also say Brody get a ton of attention for sure, but Preston and Calvin definitely. So as far as things go, I would say, perfectly good character. He was played by Nico Griffin, who originally the Yellow Ranger was going to be played by a completely different actor, but like maybe a week or so, maybe even a month. I don't remember now exactly when it was in comparison to when it was announced, the cast for the season, but originally the Yellow Ranger was going to be played by a different actor, but that got switched really, really early on for Nico Griffin, who we had this season. And my complaint, would I say that I would complain about his character? No. And at this point, you really can't say anything, because it wasn't like he was switched mid-season. It was like he was switched very early on, so it was before production had even happened. So we can't really assume anything. We don't know anything. We don't have any visual proof of how the former actor would have done in comparison. So that's something to always remember. And I'm not going to say anything about that. I am perfectly happy with what we got with his character. But anyway, let's move on to Haley, our White Ranger, who initially was actually my favorite Ranger for the season. That changed, though, because as much as I was hoping for her to be actual kind of useful and important character, she really wasn't. It was given like the least focus of all the Rangers, and of the episodes that she's had focus in, which were 2 episodes, both of the times that she had focus, she didn't have focus. And by that I mean she wasn't the only thing focused on. She was part of the focus, but in both cases, it was her and someone else. The first episode was the My Friend Redbot episode where she ended up, getting friendly with Redbot. Now, that episode focused more on Redbot than it did her. She was there and she was important to the episode, but she wasn't really at the center of focus in that episode. It was really Redbot. The other episode was the election episode, which I talked about before, where she kind of shared the focus with Calvin, which means she did get attention, but she wasn't really, given complete focus on her, which is unfortunate. So as far as things go, I really wanted her to be a really good character. I don't dislike her at all. I just think that I wish that they had given her, and I wish that they will give her in Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel more focus. Additionally, we don't really know about what she's really like. All we know is that she likes to help out with Calvin because they're kind of boyfriend-girlfriend, and also the fact that she has a dog who's named Cody. We don't really know about, is she into sports? Is she into machines? Is she into technology? Is she into something completely different? Is she into nature? Is she into... I don't know. Every Ranger has had their own kind of focus or story or something that makes them stand out about them. But she really has been the least clear as far as what she's really about. We don't really know enough. And that's really been unfortunate for me because I've wanted to know more about her. She definitely is a passionate character and one that seems to be a soothing character, but definitely not one that has had many major moments in the show. In both cases that she actually got focus, she wasn't the main focus. And also, even in those episodes, they weren't major episodes. They were filler episodes. So keep that in mind. But as a whole, I do hope that she'll improve in Super Ninja Steel. And I wouldn't say that I dislike her. I just hope that she gets more attention. That's all it is. I really would love her to get more attention. She's kind of falling into the same situation as Sierra Hanna, who played Gia, the Yellow Ranger from Super Megaforce and Megaforce, where for her character, she got a few focus episodes, but in most cases, we really didn't get to know her enough. And that was one of the things that really was unfortunate about her character. So I really hope that they really kind of give her a bit more focus in Super Ninja Steel. Now, as far as things go with the follow-up season, as far as things go with Levi, the Gold Ranger, he's been my other favorite Ranger for the season. He had a great story introduction. He was the Sixth Ranger. He was the brother of Brody. Originally, they weren't sure whether or not he was actually the brother. He was, originally performing music and had a different name that he was going by because that was the name that he decided to go with instead of his original name, which was Aiden, because he lost his memories when he was captured by Madame Odious. So that, of course, is important to remember. So, of course, all of that is true. He's had some really awesome weapons. He has the Great Bull Rider Megazord, which has been lots of fun. And he's just been a really cool character. I've liked him a lot. He's played by Jordy Weber, and I've really enjoyed him. I can't wait to see how he'll expand as a character in Super Ninja Steel. I do know that there is going to be a moment where he'll be fighting some evil version of himself, so that'll be kind of interesting to see. Or he'll become evil. I don't really remember the exact details of it, but something like that is going to happen in Super Ninja Steel, and I think that his character should be really cool to see. As a whole, I've really just enjoyed him. So now moving on to some of the other characters, let's move on to the villains for the show. So the main villains I'm just going to talk about are really Madame Odious, Cosmo, and Galvanox. So starting off with Galvanox. Galvanox has been a character that's kind of been not focused on too much. He's been alright. I've liked him a bunch, but I definitely feel like he could have been a little bit more seen, a little bit more interesting as a whole. Again, they are taking a suit from Japan, so that means that this was not an original design, which implies that they don't have all the creative abilities that they would have had. But he's been okay. He could have been better, but he's been alright. Definitely not one of my favorite main villains, but one that I would say has had his moments that were really good, and some moments that where he could have been a little bit more exciting or interesting to see. As far as Madame Odious goes, I've enjoyed her a bunch. She definitely is the biggest mystery, of course. You want to know, like, what's her whole deal? Is she working for someone else? Why does she hate Galvanox? What is the situation there? We don't really know. All we know is that she doesn't like him, and then she tries to blame others like Ripcon, who ends up getting destroyed, and other people as well. So clearly she has her own plans in mind, and from what we saw at the end of Power Rangers Ninja Steel's finale, we saw that she does survive the ship crash, which means that she will be the main villain, at least for now. Now, does that mean that Galvanox is done for? Probably not. What that might mean is that he's done for now, but maybe he'll show up in the finale or one of the later episodes of Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel, or they might decide to do something completely original and introduce an original villain for this, or they'll do a throwback to a past villain. Again, not very clear yet. We don't know enough about Super Ninja Steel. We haven't heard much yet to really give a definitive opinion about it, but that's something to note. Cosmo Royale, I just wanted to bring up him just because he's been okay. He hasn't done too much. He was based off of a Japanese character from a season that didn't actually show up in America, and it's really cool to see that he was turned into this original character based off of that villain, which was a much darker character. But they made him fun. They made him a little bit lighter, but at the same time still had some nasty moments, and I liked it. So now moving on to the last couple of characters I want to talk about. For starters, I'm going to talk about Mick. Mick has probably been my favorite character this entire season. I have loved Mick. Mick was played by Kelson Henderson, who's been in Power Rangers SBD through Power Rangers Jungle Fury, and he's been in this season. And, the actor. So as far as things go, Mick has had some really wise words. He's been a really great resource. He's had this whole connection with himself and Princess Viera, which I really appreciated that whole aspect of. And I've really liked his character a lot. I really wish that his character would develop out a lot more. And as far as things go with him going back to the Lion Galaxy, I'm sure that he'll return, if not like right away, shortly after. I would hope latest would be fall, and I really don't want it to be that late because Kelson Anderson has been a really awesome character, and he's been the mentor for the season. He's been one of the best mentors we've had in recent years. I would say that big time. Because of all the Neo Saban era mentors, he's probably been one of my favorite ones, and just in general, he's been a really good mentor, and really has made the Rangers think and use clever words, and just been a really interesting and helpful character. He also just became a Ranger, so that is really cool. He's actually the first mentor / Ranger that we've had of the Neo Saban era seasons. And if you're wondering what Neo Saban era basically means, it means any season that's happened during the time that Nickelodeon was showing Power Rangers, which means from Power Rangers Samurai all the way up to Power Rangers Ninja Steel that I'm referring to. So he's definitely been the most interesting mentor, and the first mentor that we've seen that was also a Ranger in this era of Power Rangers. There were previous in the past eras, but he's been the first one that's been both a mentor and a Ranger in this one. And just in general, I've just liked him a lot. I think a lot of people find him to be one of the best characters of this season, and I totally agree with that. I hope that he gets a lot more attention and he gets a lot more focus in the future. Additionally, I wanted to talk about Redbot quickly, which I'll say I'm glad that they created this original character. I wouldn't say that he's done too much, but I like the general concept behind him. But that's about it. I don't have too much to say about him. I enjoyed the fact that he existed, even if he wasn't that great as a character. I hope that if they decide to do more of him, they make him even more interesting. Again, he's based off of the Red Ranger Zord, so that's something to note. But they don't really bring up that factor other than the fact that that's something you can just see yourself. Lastly, I want to talk about two other characters, which are Victor and Monty. Victor and Monty have been two characters that this season has been notoriously hated for. A lot of people really don't like those two characters. People really find them to be extremely annoying. They're not funny. They're not entertaining. Their jokes are very immature, and it's really unfortunate because when people first heard about them, they initially equated them to to Bulk and Skull. Bulk and Skull, for those that do not know, were the original bully characters in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. They eventually became police officers, and then following that, they became detectives, and they also became people that wanted to look for the Rangers, and they also became chimps. They became scientist helpers. Eventually, Bulk became a samurai teacher, and Skull became this really rich guy. I mean, they developed a lot, and they had so much story to them. They actually helped the Rangers out. They actually did some interesting stuff. They were funny. They were entertaining. They had their own music. They were so much more developed, so much more interesting, and just great to see every single week with the Rangers. They weren't something that hurt the show. They were something that actually, made the show even better than it already was and made it more fun. With Victor and Monty, they've just been distractions. They don't add to the Rangers. They don't help them. They don't come across as being very useful. They've had moments where they've seemed to redeem themselves, but then they do something that kind of screws up that. Where they seem like they're going to be doing something great and actually helping the Rangers, something has to get in their way. I don't get it. I don't get why they have to do that to them, especially with the finale where they decided to do the fart joke. That was so unnecessary. Don't get me wrong. They're not supposed to be the greatest characters. They're not supposed to be, sweet or smart or like, the most meaningful characters to the overall story, clearly. But the fact that they had to do stuff like that, it's just unfortunate. To me, I would like it a lot more if they gave them some more to do. Because, I always compare them to Bulk and Skull, and so does everyone else, because that is the best comparison you can make. And those two characters were so developed. They had great stories. They had great backgrounds. I want that to be what we're getting with these characters. I'm not expecting them to exist past Ninja Steel, but it's really unfortunate to know that they really didn't end up redeeming themselves in the end of the season as much as I was hoping for them to. I really hope that this changes in Super Ninja Steel. I'm not saying that I'm upset or angry or annoyed or anything. I'm just saying that it really makes me unhappy to know that, just because it's not good on their parts. You have these characters used in practically every single episode, and you decide to turn them into jokes that aren't really that funny. And it's just sort of like, if you're gonna have these characters, make them interesting, make them meaningful. Don't make them just something that people look at and say, these guys again. Make them something people want to come back and see. So that's about it for them. Obviously, there's Brody and Levi's father, who really hasn't as much attention. I found him okay, and I definitely want to see where he'll go in Super Ninja Steel. As far as things go with the series and the show itself, I've enjoyed it in a lot of ways, but I definitely have found a lot of things that could have been better. Next year is going to be the Super season, so it's going to be the 25th anniversary. There are going to be cameos from past Rangers, so we are going to be seeing a bunch of those happen. We've already heard about several of the actors that are said to be returning. There was even a recent spoiler revealing some information for the anniversary regarding 2 past Rangers and a potential relationship they may have. Yeah, that's something that's kind of interesting. I don't know if that will actually mean much more than just that they're in a relationship, or if that will actually lead to a whole wedding episode. I'm hoping that it's not a whole wedding episode, because that's kind of out of place, and why would that really happen? But, if they could do something interesting with that would be cool. As a whole, Power Rangers Ninja Steel has had its moments where they've been great, and it's had its moments where they've been not so great. And that happens with every single season, but with this season especially, it really has been a rough situation. It's also had some really low rating episodes as of late, some of the lowest rating episodes the entire out of all the most recent seasons have had. Ninja Steel has had some of the worst rating episodes. I think there was at least 3 or 4 episodes that had less than 1 million viewers on them, which could also have to do with the times, but just in general, that says something about how the show is doing with advertising and how things are working out. Again, a big part of that also has to do with the international spoilers and everything like that, because a lot of people got to see upfront early on what was going to happen in these episodes, which led to them knowing in advance, this episode is worth watching, but this episode is totally worth skipping. And that led to a lot of people finding out that I can choose now, because I know in earlier seasons they would give you stuff like that, but it wasn't to the same extent. during Dino Supercharge, there were international spoilers, but it wasn't to the extent that we knew everything that was going to happen by the time that we got to the final episode. Most of us had no idea what was going to happen during the final episode of Power Rangers Dino Supercharge. We were just kind of hoping it would be good. In this case, people already knew about the 3 Red Rangers for Power Rangers Ninja Steel. Like, I've known that since, I think, like, the beginning of September, that there was going to be 3 Red Rangers, and it was going to be Mick, Brody, and Levi's father. I know that for a while. Like, I really have, and it really bothers me, because that shows how unfortunate the international spoilers have been this year, because the fact that we know everything so early is really, really bad, because that means that ruins it for people who don't want to be spoiled, which was me. Because originally, I think it was like episode 10, people were telling me, like, oh, but didn't you hear about this thing that's happening during, like, episode 12 about how about how Aiden's really a robot and how Levi's really supposed to be his brother. Like, I didn't know that, and then suddenly people started spoiling it for me in the comments, and at that point I was like, I guess the spoilers are something that people were actually paying attention to, and at that point I was like, I have to do this. So again, it's unfortunate. I really hope that next year they choose to avoid that and really hold back on the international spoilers a lot more. Give us the initial, 1-line or 2-line summaries that we typically get, but don't give us all that information. Like, don't make it so that we know everything that's going to happen for all the episodes by September. Like, that's what happened. I knew everything that was going to happen for the rest of the season by the time that we were on, the 10th episode of the season. I don't want that. I think it may have been the 10th or 11th episode of the season. I don't want that at all. I want it to be the case where we know something, but we don't necessarily know everything. I want it to be a surprise. I want to know that the final episode or the anniversary episode is something that I won't know and no one else won't know. So please, I'd love to hear your opinions. Have you guys enjoyed this? I'm looking forward to Super Ninja Steel. I know this video was super long, but again, that's because of the final thoughts video. I wanted to go over all the Rangers, the villains, the monsters, all these different characters. So until then, guys, I'd love to hear your opinions. Again, Power Rangers Super Ninja Steel next year. And until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys.